Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, hey, hey. You heard about Marvin Gaye? We got him. Talking about Hitler, USA. We got it. We got those fine, fine super supremes. The kind of girls you see in your dreams. When you hear a thundering sound, you know it comes from Detroit town. Talking about Rosa Parks, we center. Talking about Henry Ford, the inventor. Talking about Aretha, yeah. We got her. Queen of soul, don't you know? Bob Seger, yeah. We got him. In that old time rock and roll. Slim Shady set the world on fire. The big three, baby, and the finest cars. George Clinton's peak funk all stars. We spend our days on the line and nights in the bars.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah,
Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, I love
Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're back for our Detroit show for the night, and I forgot to change the date. Oops. Well, I guess it's still accurate because we're still in the 1940s, but tonight is a special show on the arsenal of democracy. So it is going to be a shorter show, about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, because we still have the other rocket launch, because we've covered a lot of them today. We have the other Russian rocket launch that's coming up here in just over an hour and a half. So we want to make sure that we're on time for that in case there are fireworks, literally and figuratively. Hard to tell what the United States is going to do in that instance, but we shall see. So, no, they just canceled the California one. That's where I was at. That's why I'm late, because they just canceled the California one. Um, hang on, I got to get rid of Hayden's stream because I was watching it. I can't, I can't think and talk and listen and read stuff at the same time, and I'm trying to keep up on the Russia thing. So, anyways, we're gonna take a trip through the industrial prowess of Detroit during the Second World War. Some of these will be talked about in a future episode. So we'll get to those later. But we'll touch on them briefly before we get to that point. So this will be a brief overview of what was happening in Detroit and how it was so instrumental to the war effort and how it was so instrumental to defeating the Nazis. So that's what we got coming up for today's show. Like I said, there's a bunch more on the back burner with just about everything in the world going on today. That's always fun. So we'll get started. We'll get right into it. Why will this tab not go over there? Stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop. I fixed it. Arsenal of Democracy. So, as usual, we're in Detroit, Michigan. 1940s, Detroit became the manufacturing hub for everything to support GIs in the war effort in Europe and Asia. All the major manufacturers switched gears to wartime production. And with that, we're going to start with a kind of a promotional video for the war effort. So let's say hello and we'll get right into it. Chinny, hello. Digger, hello, hello. Linda, hello. And Jacob, hello, whenever you get over there. So, we're going to start with Our Block Goes to War, the Arsenal of Democracy, World War II. Presented by Chrysler.
I'd like to tell you something about our block and what it's doing in the war. I call it our block because I live here, and also because I'm the letter carrier. So I know my neighbors better than most. I know them and I like them. Now, Doc Crockett lives here. It's mighty busy these days. You know, most of the younger doctors are in the Army and the Navy. And besides that, he's giving our first aid classes and advising our families on nutrition problems. Now, that's old Mr. Nesbitt. He lives with his daughter and son-in-law, Nick Dunlap. Morning, Mr. Nesbitt.
Hiya, Fred. Out for a walk again today?
Oh, he's always saying something like that. Fine man. The children on the block all call him Uncle Henry, and they think the world of him. Now, that's Mr. Ryder. He's a lawyer and the air raid warden on our block. Takes a lot of magazines, big heavy ones, too. Oh, he's a great hand to read.
Good morning, Fred.
Morning, Mr. Ryder.
There you are.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
He helps us all with our income tax and all the other blanks we have to fill out for the government. And there's Mrs. Angelo getting the kids off to school. Mr. Tucker, the automobile dealer, lives next to the Angelos. He's a great help in keeping all the cars on our block in good shape for the duration. And there's Mrs. McAvoy sweeping her front porch. The McAvoys have got 2 boys, bright youngsters, too. Maury Abrams is getting up his flag. We all have flags on our block, but sometimes we forget to put them up. Oh, I know we shouldn't forget, but we're all pretty busy nowadays. You know how it is. And there's Anatole Giraud. He's a Frenchman, so I say, bonjour.
Good morning, Fred.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Fred, you are getting better. You speak almost like a native.
He's got 2 sons in the Navy and a brother fighting somewhere with the Free French. And Stanley Kubusinski lives across the street. He's got a fine vegetable garden in his backyard. Now, there's the Humphrey home.
Fine vegetable garden.
And is he
Hey,
busy
fast.
these days? Now, there's Mrs. Beebe. She's a widow, and those are her two daughters, Lucille and Norma. The Ericksons live here. That's Swen with the two lunchboxes. They're Swedes, and they got a roomer, Emil Schwartz. There's Emil now, backing out the car. Emil comes from a German family. Ericksons are Swedes, Rose a Frenchman, and the Beebe girls are of English descent. Put them all together, and they spell America. Anyway, that's how we think of it in our block. You've seen just a few of our neighbors. Now, down the street live the Loomises, the Joneses, the Lockwoods, the O'Days, the Browns, the Moody's, and a lot more, including the Copelands. That's me, Fred Copeland, letter carrier. Everybody knows me. They say the postman always rings twice. But I never have to ring more than once, for the folks are always on the lookout for mail these days. Here's a letter for you.
Thanks.
They tell me about the good news that I bring them and the bad news when it comes. Evenings, they like to sit around and talk about their work because they're mighty proud of what they're doing in this war. For instance, you take Stan Kubasinski, who works on the second shift at the tank plant. Stan's worried about his folks in Poland. You don't hear a word from him. Oh, he never says much about it, but I guess he does a lot of thinking. Stan used to live on the outskirts because he always liked to work in the earth. Is that right, Stan?
That's right, Fred. We're the place quite a way out, next to one of the nicest farms you could find around here. Then, one day in the summer of 1940, we saw a surveyor on the property. A couple weeks later, the steam shovels went to work. And through the fall and winter on that farm was growing a great tank arsenal. And only a part of the plant was finished, and that part was heated by a locomotive. We went to work on the first of our medium tanks. Even then, nearly a year before Pearl Harbor, we knew that time was precious, so we didn't waste any getting started. Day after day, we got new machines, hundreds of them, along with thousands of gauges and fixtures and tools, each one going into the place that had been planned for it. We were all worked up when the day came for us to turn over to the Army the first M3 medium tanks.
Built by Chrysler. Chrysler Automotive. In Warren, Michigan, on the north side.
After we'd made many hundreds of M3s, the Army wanted us to build a new tank. So we went right to work, and after months of planning and preparation, we accomplished what we'd never done in automobile days. We changed models without stopping our production lines. We were all pretty excited out at the arsenal the day the last General Lee came off. And there, right behind it, was the brand new M4, the powerful General Sherman. What's more, the government wanted them in much larger quantities than before. So our tank plant was enlarged. Complete departments were moved into other company plants. And we also added new assembly lines. So now they are coming out faster and faster. And let me tell you, they are beauties too. We had another thrill, a great thrill, when one day we looked up and there was the commander-in-chief himself with our big force.
So you fellows got started months before we got into the war, huh?
That's right. And it's a good thing we did too. We were building tanks long before the Japs attacked us. And they've been rolling off the lines ever since. When we boys go to the movies and see newsreels of American tanks in action in Africa and Russia and over there in those Pacific Islands, pushing through, winning battles, bringing the day of victory that much nearer, well, it makes a man feel proud of the work he's doing.
I should think it would.
Of course, I don't work on the tank engines. If you want to know about them, ask Maury Abrams.
Yeah, I will. So I dropped in on the Abrams house to see Maury.
Does Miss go on next?
Anybody home?
Hello, Fred. Come right
Hello,
in.
Mr. Copeland.
Hello, Arthur.
Gee, Dad, I've got to help Uncle Henry.
Then run along.
Goodbye, Mr. Copeland.
Bye. Have a cigar, Fred?
Sure, thanks.
We had a big day at the plant since the last time I saw you.
Yeah, what happened?
It was some time ago, but I just forgot to tell you about it. In the first place, you know we build the engines that go into Army tanks. What happened was, we were asked to design a tank engine out at our place that could be built on our own machinery. That's just what we did. And is it a wow? But we're not stopping there. Right now, the engineering department is working on a new engine that'll be even better.
But what about that big day you spoke of, Maury?
Well, the boys of the tank arsenal got there ahead of us. They were mighty proud out there when they were awarded the Army-Navy E-flag, the first to be given a tank plant in the country. Then came our turn when we got the E-flag too. The citation read, "For achievement in the production of war materials." Since then, other plants of the corporation have won it also for making cannons and other things. Still, it's different when it flies over the place where you work. They say it means excellence, but I figured out something else it might stand for.
What do you think the E stands for, Maury?
Understand, Fred, this is just my own idea, and it may sound kind of silly to you, but some of the boys at the plant think it's pretty good. Well, anyway, here it is. E means that in this emergency, every hour of every day, each man will give earnestly and efficiently everything he's got to these essential engines, so our expeditionary forces can engage the enemy, encircle, and eventually exterminate him, and establish everlasting equality of opportunity.
Say, that's swell.
My boy, you helped me a little bit with it.
Good for him. You know, Maury, if the Army and Navy heard it, I'll bet they'd say that's just what they want that E of theirs to stand for. Say, can I take that and make some copies of it? I want to show it to the boys down at the post office.
Why, sure, Fred.
I'll see that you get it back. Now, there's Nick Dunlap. He just came home from work. I don't see his father-in-law. I want you to meet him. He's a character. Hello, Nick. Where's Uncle Henry?
Oh, hello there. He's out with the kids. Come on, sit down. I'll be back in a little while.
How are things going out where you work?
Couldn't be better. But that's what you'd expect from an outfit like ours. You see, building for war was nothing new to us. Our company was founded during the First World War. Why, we still got a car out there that was used by General Pershing 25 years ago. So we knew what it was all about. That's why we were one of the first to supply our new streamlined army with transportation. We got a head start on a lot of the boys because we'd been through all this in the other war. Why, even by the summer of 1941, months before Pearl Harbor, we'd made and delivered more than 75,000 specially designed army trucks.
Mighty important job you fellows are doing.
You bet it is. Why, do you realize that our trucks were the first to see service in Africa and the first to go across the new highway to Alaska? You know, you can't expect soldiers to fight unless you can get them to where it's going on. We'll move them up to the front, and we know what they'll do after they get there.
You bet we know. Every man jack up. Soldier, sailor, and marine. Now let's drop in on another neighbor, Dan McAvoy. We'll most likely find him down in the basement working on some new gadget. Hiya, Dan.
Hello, Fred. Come on down.
What's that, another military secret?
Not quite yet, but it may be some of these days.
Did they ever use that other idea of yours?
They certainly did. I like to fool around down here, just like a lot of other fellas do in their basements. Try to figure out ways to save time and eliminate waste motion, so as to get the work out quicker. You know, airplane wing assembly is rather complicated. It takes a lot of hard study. But we do know that the sooner we get those babies up in the air, the sooner this thing is going to be over.
Keep them flying, eh, Dan?
Fill the skies with them, said I. Let the skies be filled with them. Smash the tyrants that's trying to take away our rights and liberties. Smash them! May the saints preserve me and not what would blow.
Smash him in the face.
Good old Dan. He certainly gets himself worked up. But perhaps that's a good idea nowadays. We'll look in on Lucille and Norma Beebe, two of the nicest girls in our block.
Well, what can I do to help? Well, the potatoes are on. Suppose you whip up some biscuits while I get out of these things and take a shower.
Hot biscuits and honey. Mm-hmm.
Why, it's Mr. Copeland. Well, come right in.
What do you suppose I saw today?
Never could guess. Tell us.
A man welder.
Will you excuse me? I'll be right back.
Go right ahead, Lucille. How's the job going, Norma?
Oh, just fine. Here, have a cookie. Baked to myself.
Thanks.
You know, you hear a lot of talk nowadays about women working in factories. But for years, women have been helping to build automobiles. So making airplanes was just a natural changeover when the war came. We're proud of the housekeeping in our plant, where everything is so clean and orderly. And that's just the way it should be, as a setting for those wonderful ships. Why, it's positively thrilling the way our fuselage sections are coming off.
The B-24
You've
Liberator.
actually done it yourself. You can't appreciate the feeling you have when you help to create one of those beautiful machines, and you realize that the life of one of our boys may depend on what you do.
You modern girls are wonderful.
Not a bit more than our mothers and grandmothers. They worked just as hard, only they had different jobs.
By the way, how is your mother?
She's fine. About time she should be home, too. She works 3 days a week at the Red Cross.
What a family. What a busy, useful family. In other words, what an American family. But then there are a lot of them in our block and all over the country. Take Pete Angelo, for example. There he is with his son, Nino. Hiya, Pete.
Oh, it's Fred Copeland. Just one more and the game is finished.
Oh, Daddy, give me a hurry! We're going to be late for Uncle Henry. Oh, let me go. We're going to be late for Uncle Henry.
You got lots of time. These kids got to be doing something all the time.
We should all be doing something.
That's right. You should see, Fred Copeland, how busy we are at our plant. Well, I guess you heard it's one of the largest in all the world. Why, just one of those buildings covers as much as 50 city blocks. It takes 23 restaurants to feed our people. 23 restaurants. And that engine, so big, so powerful. It's no wonder the government wants so many of them.
Our factories are going like a house afire now, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But listen, Fred Copeland, we should be doing more and more and still more until the people of all the world are free again.
Yes, sir.
Goodbye.
And that's the way it goes up and down our block. Let's see how Anatolia Roll's getting along.
About this gyro compass, I am permitted not to tell you everything. But however, it is very interesting the way it is tested. We have a way to make believe, to simulate all the motions of a ship at sea. And so we test our compasses that when the levers, they are perfect. They are most intricate machines and as delicate as the finest watch. And so important. You see, when a ship is protected against magnetic mines, Then the old magnetic compass, it was useless. So this electric compass, for that's what it is, became one of our most vital war necessities. And we turned them out faster and in larger quantities than anyone has ever done before. So I keep these tools clean and bright for such an instrument as the gyro compass, with its so beautiful delicacy.
Sven Eriksson and Emil Schwartz are great pals. We'll probably find them together.
You can go in, but quietly, please.
I guess that will do it.
Fine move. Brilliant move. I withdraw.
So we both won a game today, huh? Why, hello, Fred.
You come in so quiet, we didn't even hear you.
How's everything?
Just fine. Emil and I, we play chess to forget about the war for a little while. But all day long, I'm at the plant, helping to make the Bofors anti-aircraft cannon. A very intricate gun, this Bofors, with thousands of parts. We make the big barrels, the heavy breech rings, and the recoil mechanisms. In fact, we make everything. And then we assemble them, too. The Army and Navy say they are one of Uncle Sam's best defenses against dive bombers and torpedo planes. So we are putting them out as fast as we can, you betcha.
And while Sven makes the cannon, we in our plant are turning out millions of rounds of ammunition. They range in size from bullets for Tommy guns to explosive shells for anti-aircraft fire. Our management took one of our automobile assembly plants and turned it into an ordnance plant. We do everything from making shell casings to loading and test firing. In other plants, we make armor-piercing ammunition and 20mm explosive shells. If you could hear some of those big boys let go, you would say we're doing a buy-up job.
That's right, boys. Keep them firing. What's that noise? Somebody fooling around your car?
Oh, it's only our friend like Tucker.
He wants to make sure the car is all right.
Why, of course it's Lloyd. I didn't recognize him.
How goes it?
Hello, Fred. All right. I drop around now and then on my neighbors just to be sure they're taking care of their cars.
You automobile dealers are sure doing your share. There ain't no doubt about that.
Of course, we automobile men are helping, too. For example, our corporation has set up an organization to provide essential parts for its cars and trucks. There are more than 7 million cars and trucks built by our corporation in use today. And we feel a definite responsibility to help our owners wherever they are and at whatever time. So we have central depots in main distribution centers in addition to the dealers serving every section of the country. It's through these repair shops operating on a carefully worked out system that we try to supply any spare part needed to keep our portion of the nation's transportation units in good running order.
That's a fine thing. I don't know what the men in our block would do if they didn't share rides with their neighbors.
Yeah, we got to keep them running or we'd swamp our streetcars and buses. And when you have a good car to start with, it doesn't take much time and money to maintain it in the best condition.
We've certainly got to do that today.
You bet you do. And then you realize that the manufacturer has built more mileage and more dependability into his product than you had any idea of. And now, all that expert knowledge is being put to work to help win the war. Everybody's putting his heart into his work these days. If you don't think so, ask Newt Humphrey what his outfit's doing. He won't tell you much, but ask him anyway. You may learn something.
Sorry, Fred, but Mom's the word on the things we're working on now. You can understand that. Of course, this isn't the first time we engineers have had to keep secrets about what we were developing in our research laboratories.
Is that so?
You bet. And don't forget that we fellows pioneered the all-steel automobile body, hydraulic brakes, floating power, high compression engine, and fluid drive. Those and many other devices for greater safety, economy, and comfort were for an army, the great army of American motorists. Now we're putting all our engineering talent and ingenuity to work for another army and for the Navy. Yes, we're keeping secrets again, and mighty important ones, too. We've got a lot of things on the fire, Fred, that we think are going to be tremendous. Yes, sir? All our facilities for research and manufacturing are devoted exclusively to the war effort. We're going to have bigger guns and shells, more accurate sights, more powerful engines, faster planes, and greater tanks and trucks. All these and more lie in the future somewhere this side of victory. And if you don't think they're needed, here comes a young fellow who will tell you differently.
Who's that?
Jimmy.
Jimmy? Is he back in this country?
He's home on leave. Just come in last night. Oh, come on in, son.
Well, Jimmy, my boy, I'm glad to see you. How are you?
Well, I'm fine, Mr. Copeland. You look just about the same.
Oh, I'll go on forever. But never mind us. What about yourself?
Oh, it's great to be home. I'm anxious to get back over there again. I'm going, too, as soon as this bum leg heals up. You know, we've really started to move. There's no doubt about it. Everybody says so. It may take a long time yet, but anyhow, we've started, and that's the important thing. You know, we don't hear any squawks about our equipment either. Those planes and tanks and guns, they're all working together. But keep them coming. We need more of everything and still more. You folks at home have to realize that you're soldiers too, just as much as we are. Except that you have a different job to do. Don't forget those guys we're fighting are plenty tough. But we can be a whole lot tougher if we all pull together. Understand, I'm not complaining. And that goes for the boys up north where it's plenty cold. The boys in the desert where it's plenty hot. The boys that have to dig their beds in the jungle swamp. The boys in the air and the boys on the sea. You just do your part and you'll see. We'll do ours.
Praise the Lord, Jimmy. Those on our block are doing their part. Jack Loomis is putting in plenty of time and energy making aluminum forgings for airplanes. 4 men of our block are in departments producing critical machine tools, anti-aircraft gun and bomber parts made of powdered iron, steel, and other metals. Fred Brown's heart is all wrapped up in the field kitchens he's building. If he has his way, no fighting man will ever go hungry. Art Lockwood works on firefighting equipment for defense against air raids. Mike Jones assembles the big sirens for air raid protection. Joe Moody's an expert welder on pontoons for the Navy. And Hal Fisher is on those huge marine tractors to push landing barges, firefighting equipment, and other shallow water boats. While Shorty Baroni puts the finishing touches on air conditioning equipment for Army and Navy hospitals. Tony Sargent hits the ball on heating and cooling apparatus for maintaining proper temperature and moisture control in factories and laboratories. And Tom Pearson puts in 48 hard working hours each week on complex, sturdy landing gears for our fighter planes. Yeah, the folks in our block are doing their part. And with it comes the satisfaction of work well done. For some of us, it's the end of another day, while other men and women are just starting off to work. For the wheels of industry must keep turning night and day until this war is won and peace comes again to this troubled world. As I told you in the beginning, there's nothing extraordinary about our block. We're just average American citizens, and the high hopes, the dauntless courage, and the grit to see it through. Why, that, praise the Lord, is just average American, too.
Tired, Dad?
A little, but not enough to talk about.
Hey, looks like you got a good haul today.
Oh, it's the same every day. Those kids are irresistible, and they work like Trojans.
There aren't any shirkers or complainers in our block, Dad.
Not on our block.
It's kind of a weird thing to say.
We're all in this now, fighting on the battlefront and on the home front in defense of our freedoms. The freedom to worship God in our own way according to our own conscience. The freedom of the press. The freedom of speech. The freedom to make a home for our loved ones and ourselves. To work in the earth and enjoy the fruits of our labor. To work in the factories of industry where American initiative accomplishes so much, whether in peace or in war. It is this spirit of American business enterprise that has built the small town and has erected the great cities among the many wonders of the New World. You hear people say we are too slow getting into this fight for freedom, but they forget all these years we've been learning the arts of peace, and we've learned them so well that no other people on earth lives so free and so bountiful a life, and erected such imposing monuments to freedom and the American way of living. Why, I went to work around 30 years ago at the same plant where you're working now.
That's right, Dad.
Why, for more than a quarter of a century, we built cars and trucks. We didn't think of it just like this. As a matter of fact, we were building them for freedom. For freedom to travel about our glorious country, to carry us to and from our work, to bear clergymen, doctors and nurses on errands of mercy, to transport food and goods. But at the same time, we were accomplishing a greater end. Don't let them tell you we weren't prepared for this war. Why, we had on tap an unmatched score of mechanical brains and engineering genius that we've been building up for 40 years. When it comes to working with steel, iron, and other metals, with glass, rubber, and plastics, I'd have you know that we in the automobile industry know how. And we found out how by working together, by learning together, and by building together. We furnished the tools of war, and we placed them in the hands of the bravest fighting men in the world. Further than that, whether we are fighting around the world with our Army and Navy and Marines, or whether we are enlisted in the Army of Industry, our faith is firm and our will is strong. With confidence in our armed forces and the unbounded determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. So help us God.
Hell of a speech, young man. God, I wish we still had some of that, right? Wouldn't that be nice if we still had just a little bit of that? Just a little bit. It doesn't seem like it exists anymore, personally. But yeah, so that is kind of an overview. But let's get into the other portion of it now. So, gentlemen, we must outbid Hitler. So that was a William Knudsen, the president of General Motors at the time, largest corporation in history. In 1940, President Franklin Roosevelt charged him with heading up all military production in the United States. So Knudsen gave one of the most well-compensated jobs in the nation to take on the government position at a salary of a whole $1 US. So he took on the entire war effort for $1. We just don't have that anymore. It's not something that I ever see happening again like that. Knudsen gave a keynote speech that lit the flame of industrial Detroit just after that in 1941. And that's where that famous quote came from. Gentlemen, we must outbid Hitler. Knudsen became a lieutenant general in the U.S. Army, the first and only civilian in America to receive the honor. And of course, the people of Detroit became heroes for all they did for assembly, for the war effort. So, even with inflation, that's all. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, he did it to do it. He did it because it was a different time. So that was one of the contributions by General Motors. There's others that we'll get to. This one is the one I'm not going to go into a ton of depth with, just because we still have that one coming up. And like I said, I think I'm going to do it at the end or play it when I can't get to it or something like that. So there's a couple things I want to tweak about it, but that program is completed. In spring of 1941, before Pearl Harbor, but well after the war had begun in Europe, and like you, I believe you said, Digger, they knew we were getting into the war. It was I mean, we were already starting production here. So Edsel Ford and Charlie Sorensen began mobilizing the ambitious industrial project, a factory that could turn out the biggest, most destructive bomber in the American arsenal, the B-24 Liberator. And they wanted to get to a production rate of 1 per hour, 1 major bomber aircraft per hour coming off. Ford had never built a bomber, and a 4-engine bomber, and aviation experts said that the bomber could not be built. It was a plane that could not be built at the time. And like I said, we're going to just briefly go over this one because there's a program coming specifically to this one. But this began the construction on the Willow Run Bomber Plant in a town called Ypsilanti, Michigan. It soon became the largest factory under one roof in the entire world. So its goal was to apply automaking mass production principles to a 56,000-pound, 300-plus mile-an-hour bomber. The Washington Post called Willow Run the single greatest manufacturing plant the world has ever seen. And the Wall Street Journal at the time called it the production miracle of the entire war. 1945, Ford began building Liberators at 1 per hour. And like I said, that's where we'll leave that one. Because, yeah, I mean, they achieved their goal by 1945, and it was hella impressive. Like I said, there's an entire program coming on that one. So we'll skip kind of through that one. As faithful as a dog, as strong as a mule. So in 1940, the U.S. Army asked car companies come up with a design for a lightweight, under 2,200 pounds or 2,175, four-wheel drive vehicle that could be mass-produced and take place of horses that had been in warfare for centuries. The vehicle had to conquer all kinds of terrain, and it had to be able to carry a 625-pound load, probably 2 GIs and equipment. Excuse me. 3 companies put in to build prototypes: Willys Overland, Ford, and Bantam. So Willys Overland and Ford made 660,000 Blitz buggies together. Willys built 376,397 of those, and Ford built 282,352. Both were very similar, had interchangeable parts, and were easy to work on. The first Jeep that Ford ever constructed, the GP #1 Pygmy, still exists. It's on display at the Veteran Memorial Museum in Huntsville, Alabama. The vehicle took on the name Jeep, and it's today called the grandfather of all SUVs. So Jeeps, and here's a quote by Ernie Pyle. Good Lord, I don't think we could continue the war without the Jeep. It does everything. It goes everywhere. It's faithful as a dog, strong as a mule, and agile as a goat. So that is the original, or the origin of the Jeep. There's several different stories on where the Jeep name came from, but there's no consensus, so just kind of left it out. So 1940 also, as we saw in the film, Chrysler built swarms of tanks. So in 1940, Newton telephoned Keller, the chief executive of Chrysler, and asked him if Chrysler could build tanks. Keller said, "I don't know. I've never seen one of those things." Soon after, Chrysler broke ground on what would become as the Detroit Arsenal tank plant, situated in what's now the suburb of Warren. Its goal to build swarms of tanks according to automaking mass production principles, something never accomplished before. The Chrysler empty tank rolled off the assembly line before the walls were even up on the factory. Engineers brought in a steam locomotive to place so that the workers could stay warm in the winter of 1940-41. So the building's not built, and they bring in a steam train to heat up what they have so that they could actually keep people warm so they could continue to build tanks for the war effort. Just a different breed of humans, truly. The factory eventually became 1.25 million square feet, and the company then switched to M4 Sherman tanks, which were powered by the Frankenstein of a motor. Engineers took 5 6-cylinder engines that had been used in Chrysler, Royal, and Windsor cars before the war and welded them together into a 30-cylinder motor that could pump 425 horsepower. So it literally was a motor that they just connected together and made one massive motor. Detroit Arsenal built more tanks than all of the Third Reich combined during the war years. This next one I thought was really cool. The amphibious duck. Perhaps most extraordinary of all Detroit's World War II creations was a strange vehicle that could practically walk on water. In 1942, GM engineers got together with a marine architect and some Army officers to solve a critical problem. The Army was planning a massive, highly dangerous amphibious invasions, and there would be no port facilities to land. Soon a sketch on paper that could launch from a ship parted the waves on propeller power and then hit the ground at speeds of 50 miles an hour with 3 axles and 6 wheels, all which had drive power, so all-wheel drive. Hey, what's up, amazing? Well, the vehicle's name was Duck, D-U-K-W. D was the model year 42, U meant amphibious, K stood for front-wheel drive, W stood for 2-axle rear wheel drive. So it's Duck, but D-U-K-W was the name. It eventually became known as the Duck. General Motors built 21,000 of them, and they only charged the government $10,000 per duck. It could be amazing. So they only charged $10,000 a duck. That is not bad, honest. The duck was 31 feet long and could carry a payload of 5,000 pounds. Pairs of them were strapped together to serve as landing craft for tanks. They were used in the Normandy invasion. And between June 6th, 1944 and May 8th, 1945, so just under a year, the Ducks moved 5.05 million tons of cargo onto the continent of Europe. Fried chicken? The atomic bomb. Another thing that the city of Detroit had some input and some interaction with. So 1525 Woodward Avenue in Detroit in 1943 might have noticed something odd. There was a ton of security in front of a abandoned department store. Chrysler engineers had set up offices for something called Project X100. FBI was patrolling the premises as the work was so top secret that none of the engineers working on the project had any knowledge about it. So much like what we saw with Los Alamos National Lab and what's the other one? I know this. Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So much like in those places, very compartmentalized. Nobody knew what was going on, and nobody knew what the end product was. So only the top executives at Chrysler knew that the company was helping to build an atomic bomb. So it was very secretive. So the laboratory in Woodward's Chrysler engineers designed diffusers, cylindrical metal containers that would not corrode during the process of separating fissile uranium 235 from uranium 238 at the Army's secret Oak Ridge atomic plant in Tennessee. By 1944, thousands of workers at Chrysler's Lynch Road factory were building at 3,500 of these diffusers. So they built 3,500 of the diffusers by 1944. According to the Atomic Heritage Foundation, the diffusers were so well designed that they were not only instrumental in building the Little Boy, they remained in use until the 1980s. So yeah, I remember that one, the duck boat. I would imagine that they're not World War II duck boats, but they could have been. And then General Motors. So General Motors was huge. Of course, they had the main contract. Their guy was running the show, blah, blah, blah. But the numbers that they just made were just unbelievable. So at the time of Pearl Harbor, General Motors had dwarfed every other corporation in the world by far. At the end of the war, GM had become the largest military. If I could talk, General Motors had become the largest military contractor in the world, responsible for more than $12 billion with a B in 1944 in war production. Tanks were rolling out of GM's Cadillac factory, where some of the nation's most luxurious cars were being built just a few years earlier. Oldsmobile had delivered roughly 40 million artillery rounds. Pontiac was building the highly complicated Orculon anti-aircraft guns. So here's some of the numbers from GM, courtesy of the General Motors Heritage Center. 119,562,000 artillery shells, 39,181,000 cartridge cases, 206,000 aircraft engines, 13,000 Navy fighter planes and torpedo bombers, 97,000 aircraft propellers, 301,000 aircraft gyro compasses, 38,000 tanks and tank destroyers, 854,000 trucks, 190,000 cannons, 1.9 million machine guns and submachine guns, 3.1 million carbine rifles, 3.8 million electric motors, 11 million fuses, 360 million ball and roller bearings, 198,000 diesel engines, and much more. That is insane. That is insane. To have that much production in such a short period of time. It says, so there's a note at the end of it. With the fate of the world at stake, GM played the starring role in the effort to outbid Hitler and Hiroto. No other corporation anywhere on Earth at any time in history ever did more to win a war. So that's, and of course, that included plants that were outside of Detroit, but General Motors was headquartered in Detroit, Michigan. That was where it was built. That's where it started, and that's That's in large part where a lot of these things got done. So it was instrumental to the entire war effort, instrumental to the United States, instrumental to the Allies winning the war, that Detroit had so much to do with being effective to win the war. And we probably wouldn't have had we not taken part in that. So we did. We were pretty incredible, pretty impressive. So all right. So, like I said, today's episode is going to be about an hour, just because I need just a couple minutes before the Russian, and I'm just making sure we're still go. Yeah. So the Roscosmos flight. So we'll finish up tonight's episode with the Arsenal of Democracy speech from Roosevelt. So maybe if I can push the button.
This is a talk on national security, because the nub of the whole purpose of your president is to keep you now and your children later and your grandchildren much later out of a last-ditch war for the preservation of American independence and of all the things that American independence means to you and to me and to ours. Never before, since Jamestown and Plymouth Rock, has our American civilization been in such danger as now. The Nazi masters of Germany have made it clear that they intend not only to dominate all life and thought in their own country, but also to enslave the whole of Europe, and then to use the resources of Europe to dominate the rest of the world. In view of the nature of this undeniable threat, it can be asserted properly and categorically that the United States has no right or reason to encourage talk of peace until the day shall come when there is a clear intention on the part of the aggressor nations to abandon all thought of dominating or conquering the world. The forces of the states that are leagued against all people who live in freedom are being held away from our shores. The German and Italians are being blocked on the other side of the Atlantic by the British and by the Greeks and by thousands of soldiers and sailors who are able to escape from subjugated countries. The Japanese are being engaged in China, in Asia, by the Chinese nation in another great defense. In the Pacific Ocean is our fleet, a gun loaded with explosive bullets, economic as well as military. Frankly and definitely, there is danger ahead. Danger against which we must prepare. But we well know that we cannot escape danger or the fear of it by crawling into bed and pulling the covers over our heads. Germany has said that she was occupying Belgium to save the Belgians from the British. Would she hesitate then to say to any South American country We are occupying you to protect you from aggression by the United States. Belgium is being used as an invasion base against Britain, now fighting for its life. And any South American country in Nazi hands would always constitute a jumping off place for German attack on any one of the other republics of this hemisphere. We think of Hawaii as an outpost of defense in the Pacific, yet the Azores are closer to our shores in the Atlantic than Hawaii is on the other side.
Yes, it was a fireside chat.
There are those who say that the Axis powers would never have any desire to attack the Western Hemisphere. This is the same dangerous form of wishful thinking which has destroyed the powers of resistance of so many conquered peoples. Let us no longer blind ourselves to the undeniable fact that the evil forces which have crushed, undermined, and corrupted so many others are already within our own gates. Your government knows much about them, and every day is ferreting them out. Their secret emissaries are active in our own and neighboring countries. They seek to stir up suspicion and dissension, cause internal strife. They try to turn capital against labor and vice versa. They try to reawaken long slumbering racial and religious enmities, which should have no place in this country. And there are also American citizens, many of them in high places, who unwittingly, in most cases, are aiding and abetting the work of these agents. I do not charge these American citizens with being foreign agents, but I do charge them with doing exactly the kind of work that the dictators want done in the United States. The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis. No man can tame a tiger into a kitten by stroking it. There can be no appeasement with ruthlessness. There can be no reasoning with an incendiary bomb.
Oops, nope, we don't want Reagan. Never mind. So yeah, it was like I said, it was a huge portion for the United States to be able to have Detroit and this area working on everything for the good of the country. It really made a huge difference, and like I said, there will be uh, other ones coming up in the future regarding some of the more specifics, but I wanted to give a quite just a quick overview of it, and like I said, um, it almost worked out perfectly because of the information, what happened today with the whole Russia thing. So with the whole Russia thing, uh, we have a rocket launch coming up for Russia. So I'm looking at it right now, and I think we are T minus 35 minutes. So I'm going to end this program about the Arsenal of Democracy in Detroit, Michigan. And then I am going to start up a second stream if you guys want to just hang out, it should redirect you. But I'm going to start another stream in about 10 minutes over here and talk about this and updates and kind of my thoughts on what's going on in Russia. Amazing. So if you want to stop by, we'll have that conversation over there. So another one down. Next week will be 1950 to 1960 for the Wednesday show. But until then, I hope to see you at the Soyuz launch. If not, have a good night. And I will catch you all again very soon. Take care, everybody.
Detroit, Michigan. Oh, yeah. Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, yeah. Hey, hey, hey. You heard about Marvin Gaye? We got him. Can I get a witness? Talking about hits there, USA. We got it. How sweet it is. We got those fine, fine super supremes. The kind of girls you see in your dreams. When you hear a thundering sound, you know it comes from Detroit town. Talking about Rosa Parks. We said her. Talking about Henry Ford, the inventor. Talking about Aretha, yeah. We got her, the queen of soul. Don't you know? Bob Seger, yeah. We got him in that old time rock and roll. Slim Shady set the world on fire. The big three, baby, and the finest cars. George Clinton's peak funk all stars. We spend our days on the line and nights in the bars. Yeah. Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah. Detroit, Michigan. Oh, yeah. Detroit, Michigan. Hey, hey, hey. Detroit, Michigan. Oh, I love Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan. Oh, yeah. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit.